What's the worst part of having a child? It's incessant. It never stops. You never get a day off. Going from having 2 days per week to relax and do whatever to literally never having a moment free from responsibility. I've always wanted kids and still do, but this is the only thing that has come close to giving me pause. Both my siblings have young kids, and I cannot get over how constant it is. From the second the kids wake up to when they finally shut their eyes, it's non-stop. Then they get maybe an hour or two to themselves, which is mostly spent tidying up, etc. Before the nighttime stuff starts, baby crying, toddler coming into bed, nightmares, etc. It requires years of not getting a full night's rest. You can never just go out whenever you want. No sleeping in even on weekends because someone has to be up with them at 6 a.m. Raising human children is an insane task. I'm impressed they can handle it. Ours are 2 and 4, and they run us ragged. Don't get me wrong, they're lovely, and we have fun with planned activities each time with a built-in nap time for all of us. Maybe it's because we both still work full-time in busy jobs, I don't know. I wish I was old enough to be retired, so I could take them more. We've just had our summer holidays, and I took the kids a lot so my daughter could work more. And while we've had a great time, I'm exhausted. And that was my hard time with kids. You can't just sit around and let them do whatever. Keeping them busy on a schedule keeps everyone in a fairly good mood. And so many teaching moments. They're sponges and learn so quickly. But when mine was little, I missed time just reading a book for the afternoon on a lazy Sunday. Learning to give up your time for the benefit of your kids is tough, but you do it for them. I remember being thrilled once at needing surgery, because between pre and post-op and the overnight, I read a whole book. My kids' grandparents would be cool with it every other weekend. Problem is, they don't live in town, and both sets have retired 4+ hours drive away in the countryside, where homes are affordable. So until I win the lottery and can afford a house with a granny flat, it's all on me and my wife every weekend. They visit and sleep on the pull-out couch, but it doesn't give us much time to ourselves. Maybe 3 hours on a Saturday night every few months. Nobody can prepare you for a child, no matter how much you try to explain what's coming. When my daughter was born, I was sleeping like 2 hours a day while working 10 hours night shifts because she just wouldn't stop crying. I'd come home from work and find her and my wife passed out on the couch. Then I'd sleep for an hour and a bit before they woke up. It was something. This is the exact reason I never want kids. I feel like the free time I get I desperately need to recover, to have any life enjoyment, to keep in touch with friends, to just relax, or honestly, to just get really high sometimes, and forget about life and responsibilities. I know that if I lost all that, life would be really hard for me. I only co-parented for a couple years, and I wasn't the only adult in the house or the primary caretaker, but it was still incessant. Every minute of every day you're on call and can't relax. As soon as that relationship ended, I got sterilized. Mad respect to those who can do it and those who make it work, even though it's hard on them, but I'm glad to have learned that lesson in an impermanent way. Me and my wife traveled, not a lot, but once a year, for a week. We'd go to a different country, stay in nice hotels, eat wherever we wanted, etc. Then we decided to settle down and have kids. Our oldest is 4 years old. We don't have anyone we can leave our kids with for a weekend, let alone a week. We barely get out to restaurants in town. Our big outings are taking our kids to the coffee shop where we get Americanos and really nice muffins and pastries. Then we go to Walmart. The constant anxiety that you're doing enough to shape them to make good choices, a good life, be a good person, and for them to have the life they deserve. I felt like the worst possible parent the first couple years and probably should have gone to therapy cause I was really depressed. Obviously, looking back, I'd never done it before, had no experience with younger siblings, had no family close. Of course, we were going to make mistakes. But Noon prepared me for how hard I was going to be on myself. The constant doubt and thinking, maybe they're better off without me. I'm out of that now, but that first 2 years was the worst I've ever been mentally. Don't be afraid to be silly and make mistakes yourself. Kids can grow into being themselves what they learn by example. There's so much that goes wrong, which is natural in life. I think having someone who's always there for them and on their side will account for 85% of the normal parenting. I also think there's no perfect parent, and you have to accept the responsibility as being seen as someone who occasionally hurts and occasionally heals your kid. My mom always thought she was a villain for every normal milestone that went wrong with me. I think we all will do what we're here to do. On the practical side, don't let them eat copious amounts of processed food. Probably the big one for me. You got this, and take care of yourself. If you makes you feel any better, you can't make a dog be a sheep. There are somewhere around 400 psychological traits, and all you can do is try. I say that loosely to guide them. Your child has a bunch of traits from their entire extended family. You can't engineer your child like they're a blank slate. Ultimately, who they turn out to be has nothing to do with you or your parenting. Obviously, you can try to teach them things, but if it's not in them to be a certain way, they aren't going to do it. Especially the first child. You have no idea what the fuck you're doing. You've never done anything before. You're constantly second-guessing yourself about milestones. And even if you read books, they all say different, and the right way to raise a child is always changing every few years. There were a number of years when they told parents not to expose their kids to peanuts. Then, later, they found out all that did was create a generation of kids with peanut allergies. The crazy thing is, the oldest kids always seem to be the most well-adjusted in my experience. The days drag on, but the years fly by. This is so painfully accurate. Mine turns 12 in 2 months, and I swear yesterday he started school. How can something feel so fast and so long at the exact same time? You can't wait for them to grow up until you notice they are. And you want nothing more than to freeze them in time. I'm so sad that one day he'll leave home, and I can't protect him anymore. Kids can be exhausting, ungrateful little bastards at times, but they are also your heart and soul walking around outside of your body. And you never knew just how much you could love someone, well, you created another little life. My son will be 7 in June, and I feel as if it was just yesterday he was born. I remember everything about that day. I remember losing my mucus plug before going into the hospital. I remember the 36.5 hours it took me to finally be ready to push his stubborn butt out. I remember that hour of pushing. I remember saying, "He's perfect, and he has 10 fingers and 10 toes." The time has flown by, but the days do truly drag, and I need to learn to take those days in stride. As the dad of 19 and 21-year-old daughters, all I can say is that love them in their little kid stages all you can and make time to do whatever they want. 'Cause one day you wake up and realize that they don't want to do stuff with you anymore. The next day you look around and they are moving out. My only regret is that I didn't spend more time with them, go to more cheerleading events, etc., etc. They grow up in the blink of an eye. Telling my lanky gazelle of a daughter about the photo that came up in my Facebook memories this morning. A pic of her 15 years ago having snuggled up and gone to sleep on Bear on the cool laminate floor of the kitchen, face buried in Bear. It does go so fast, like blink, and it's gone. My mom, when my eldest was born, said she felt like she was now part of this long chain of humanity stretching far, far back, and now extending out into the future. She'll have been dead a year next Saturday. Got a 4 years old and a 2 years old. Was looking at my Yo taking a nap, and he extends down full-size bed and almost fills it up like an actual kid. He's growing up so fast. Days can feel like an eternity, but yes, the years have flown by. Naturally because of parenthood, but also because of COVID. It's like a black hole. We got to spend a lot more time with our kids during COVID than most people get the chance to. So we got more time with them, but it feels like a flash in time. I blinked, and now my son is ready for kindergarten. My son started eating solids, and I had that realization I had to start feeding another living being. It's not even like feeding a dog where you give them food made just for them for the rest of your life, and you just buy it. I'm not really into cooking, but now I have to actually care because I want my son to eat a variety of things. It's just one of those things you take for granted when you only have to feed yourself. They just won't eat what you eat. So you are making chicken nuggets, fries, burgers, or rice again. It's not that I don't want to feed them the good stuff. Just they won't eat it. Had a New Year's dinner at my parents ordered a bunch of nice Chinese food, and nope, they didn't eat the lobster, shrimps, chicken, noodles, nothing. They ate white rice and tomatoes then went off to play. When we got home, they complained they were hungry like fess. We just got back from a huge dinner, except it's somehow my fault you didn't eat any of the food in your plate. What's worse is the pressure, shaming to only feed organic, non-processed, no artificial colors, flavors, and you know what kids want. Not that. Even when you let them help cook, cut it, make it look delicious, fed them that since before they knew what not to like. I try to find a balance, but I refuse to feel guilty for giving them a corn dog if that's what they will actually eat. Making a mess of dishes to do and wasting all the time just to then throw money in the garbage isn't a battle I want to fight every meal of the day. The worry that I'm a bad parent that's doing things wrong. I've observed that parents who have the capability to worry if they are doing things wrong are generally good parents. It's the ones that are 100% certain that their way is correct that I worry about. I too have these worries, but we just do the best we can go with the knowledge we have at the time. I know I'll do things different with my second compared to my first, but we all just have to be willing to learn along the way. The best piece of advice I've had for this is bad parents don't worry if they're a bad parent. It's true, but even good parents mess their kids up in some way. I had great parents who did lots of things super well, but they taught me some effed up communication styles that I've had to reprogram as an adult. I don't know that I'm doing enough to counter diet culture in my girls. They internalize it scary early. Plus, I do need to lose weight for my health, so they hear me talk about that with other adults sometimes. We have had a lot of conversations about every body being a good body, the difference between a growing kid and an adult, etc., but it might still mess them up. Trying to find the right balance between giving them autonomy with food choices and getting them to eat healthy or even eat enough that they won't be hungry in an hour is super hard. So hopefully don't screw up their relationship with food. I would be lying if I said I was perfectly patient and never yelled. I could go on and on. I hope I am doing well enough that they can grow into functional adults who can work through whatever hang-ups I pass on. Because I know I will give them some hang-ups. Every parent does, and it's just really hard to know what's best. My parents were sure that they were doing the right thing. Not a doubt in their minds about physical discipline, non-stop religious indoctrination both at home and school, keeping us in a bubble of only their influence for as long as circumstances allowed, etc. By our teens, I was self-medicating daily, and my sister ended up in inpatient psychiatric care and eventually a pregnancy, rushed marriage at 17. The same sister is now estranged, and they are still clueless as to why I'm not as, in their lives, as they like. Other than doing things as unlike them as possible a parent, I can find that I'm clueless otherwise. Were it not for the influence of my wife, brought up by progressive parents, and continuing that tradition with ours, I don't know how our kids would have turned out as well as they have. At least they don't hate and fear me, as I did with mom and dad. And that's a good start. My mother was and still is an amazing, empathetic, kind, emotionally available, and considerate parent. Yet she always asked and worried, am I a bad mother? Her main fear was acting like her mother who treated her like. I can tell you that my grandmother never once questioned if she was a good mother. If you're questioning and constantly checking yourself as a parent, you're doing something right. I've found that the best way to look at it is, accept that you will faff your kids up. It's going to happen. Humans are flawed. We make mistakes. No matter how hard we try not to, our baggage will no doubt somehow affect our children in a negative way. This is fact. Perfect is impossible. Knowing this, the real goal is try our damnedest to faff our kids up less than our parents faffed us up. Because, again, even those of us with great parents got faffed up by them one way or another. Take the things we wish had been different for ourselves growing up, and do better than what we got. If our kids are even a fraction more well-adjusted than we are, then we've done our job well. Perfect is impossible. Love, perseverance, compassion, and humility are not. I am not a big achiever, and I lose in the things I partake more than I win, make way more mistakes, and do stupid things because I don't think clearly, and maybe I am too harsh on myself. But I am always worried that I am not doing something right, and I won't be raising my child properly, especially when they will get older and in high school where the wild starts happening in their lives. That said, I think all parents should be thanking their kids at their wedding, because while we are trying to make them better people, we are actually bettering ourselves through them. Sounds super childish, but as a 24 years old with no kids, I love watching Bluey, and there's a whole episode about how Bluey's mom felt like she wasn't doing enough because Bluey wasn't at the same pace as other kids. At one point, she talks to the poodle mom who has a bunch of kids, and she explains how what she's feeling is normal, and every kid is different and special. Well, this specific clip is mostly for parents, and it's the poodle mom saying that you're doing great as a parent. Here is the episode clip. Long story short, every parent feels like they're doing things wrong, but as long as you're doing your best, you're doing it right. Be reasonable, love them, tell them that, treat them at their age, give them more responsibility each year they get older, give them clear rules, but tell them they have every right to make a clear and reasoned argument to adjust a rule, and that you promise to hear them out and consider it seriously. I've changed rules based on those arguments. Have family councils at least yearly. It's hard because they keep you on your toes. But in truth, it's not that hard really. People overthink it. Most problems arise from parents being preoccupied, lazy, not talking to their children, not giving them opportunities, responsibility, authority, clear rules, expectations, etc. At least you armed your kid with that knowledge. My mom only ever told me to just hang up the phone if bill collectors call. That was the extent of teaching me about credit and debt. Just hang up on them. I might get our phone number changed. I had heard the term credit report, but I figured it was more like your high school permanent record. It exists, but not really. I literally thought the worst consequences for not paying debts was dealing with harassing phone calls and letters. I'm not even an adult yet, but when I do think about the future and my own parents, it does kinda scare me to think about how all the stupid stuff I do, will have to watch them do, because that's just humans. I wouldn't particularly consider myself a bad person, but I do tons of stupid stuff I know that I regret, and that my parents knew that I would regret, but I just never listened to them. Jordan Peterson is pretty, but what he said about kids sticks in my head, and I'm paraphrasing here, but let them do stupid. Just make sure they're safe when they do it, because that's how they learn. And honestly, that's 99% of childhood, and most of parenting. Yeah, you climbed up on the table. Good fucking job. Don't fall down though. If and when I go to karaoke, clap for everyone. It's essentially the same thing. But the only way to escort the character is by talking, and the character is stopping to look at rocks, refuses to walk another yard if you don't change your character's hat into a pony, walks in another directions, has 2 deaf ears, but you can only control it by voice. And if you says your voice command 8 times without reaction, and shouts the 9th time, it starts crying and hates you. Also, you're full focus in on trying to solve all of the above, so both of you lose 88 horsepowers because you were attacked by a panda. You don't have time to get those 88 horsepowers back either. My kids are elementary school age, but I can already see that this is what is going to make the teenage years so hard. When they're toddlers, if you can get them to sleep, which is no guarantee, you can have an hour of mental peace, even if your house is a wreck and you're exhausted. But as they get older and start having learning issues, friend problems, mental health problems, physical health scares, etc., the worry just never stops. It's all day and all night. My aunt says, you are only as happy as your saddest kid, and it's true. You go through all of it with them. It's also relative. You can have great kids making good decisions, and you're still going to lose sleep worrying about them. My parents don't worry about me shooting up heroin, but they do worry that my boss is pushing me too hard and I don't have a good work-life balance. Never mind that my dad would put us to bed when we're little and then go back to the office for a few more hours. It's that then where it seems worse than if you went through it yourself. My oldest is 21 now, and my youngest is 4. Up until I got pregnant with my youngest, my oldest would regularly hurl himself onto my back when we were walking places and make me carry him piggyback. My youngest's favorite game is to climb up my back and then over my head and down my face. I regularly walk around the house with the small child dragging from one ankle. My middle, 16 years old, sits on my lap or lays on me wherever I sit. I play a game with the youngest where she stands on my feet while I sit, and I lift her up and pretend she's skiing. And my 16 years old asked for a turn too. You will have no personal space, and may in fact become furniture, a jungle gym for them. They also may not realize when they have grown bigger than you. Last night, when my son 8 years finally got into his own bed, I started to ask my wife when kids start giving parents space. Then I realized my 16Y stepdaughter was also in our bed, and we had to insist she went to her own bed. That doesn't happen often, but well, so much for space. My bedroom used to be a retreat, but now have a kid staring at me till I wake up daily and begging to sleep with me at night. Your life just isn't yours anymore. Honestly, my daughter is our oldest, and I've come to appreciate her more and more as she gets older. She's proved herself to be competent, responsible, and trustworthy, and so doesn't need me to micromanage her life anymore. I feel like I can more be a dad for her, and less of a caretaker for someone who is utterly incapable of running their own life, the way her younger brothers still are. It's like, me being there for her when she needs me feels infinitely more precious now that some of her life is actually her own. My youngest didn't sleep more than 2 hours at a time for the first 15 months of his life, and it was emotionally and psychologically crippling. He's 4 now and sleeps very well, but I'll never recover from that experience. Any kind of noise at night wakes me, and I automatically start counting, because when he wasn't sleeping well, if I counted to 45 without any further noise, then he'd usually sleep for another period of time. So I'd collapse back to a semi-doze until the next noise, and I can't help it. If he gets up to go to the bathroom or get a drink, I panic and have trouble getting back to sleep. Hopefully with more time, it'll fade for me. And I hope you get some rest too. Stay strong. I always feel guilty when I say that all 3 of my now wife and my kids have slept through since birth. Literally had to wake them in the morning for feeds. Bed at 7 p.m. and they wake at 6:30 a.m. Boys are 4 plus 6. Girl is 12, and she goes at 9 p.m. 7 a.m. I've spoken to mums with hallucinations due to sleep deprivation, and whilst there's no easy fix, all I can say is that me and mum, gave cuddles during the day but put down regularly to deal with separation, and passed baby between us both regularly. Also, we think this has got them used to movement, noise, and falling asleep anywhere and anytime. Good luck. When we first brought our daughter home, she wouldn't sleep at all on her own. I stayed awake all night so my wife could sleep in between feeds. Figured I'd catch up when she settles. And then never caught up for months, maybe. And I only sleep 6 hours on a good night. It's the relentless of never feeling like you've caught up that is exhausting. I think people without kids think it is the looking after kids that is exhausting. But that isn't bad, especially when they are little. It's the trying to fit your own sleep, work, life, etc. into the reduced time when you're not being occupied by the child that is the problem.